we'll go ahead and get started because we have a packed agenda today and lots of updates. So good morning to everyone. For those of you who don't know me, which I don't think that's a thing, but may not be familiar. I am Latrice Bryant. I'm the P3 Public-Private Partnership Director for the state of Colorado, welcoming you all to our last meeting of the calendar year for the subcommittee. So this is super exciting. And our first presentation for our proposals. So we're really excited to hear what UNC has brought to us today. We have a small enough group that I think it's still okay for us to do introductions so everybody understands who's on the call. And then for UNC folks, I also want you to know who you're talking to and who you're presenting to. So that'll be really helpful. Since you all have the biggest group in the room, you're gonna go last, and we can just like lead into the presentation, but we'll go ahead and start with our commissioners. Carrie, go ahead.
So I'm Carrie Schiff and I'm an EDC commissioner.
David?
I'm David Dragoo, and I'm also an EDC commissioner, and thanks for having me this morning.
Simon.
Hello, Simon Tafoya. I am also an EDC commissioner.
And Steve.
Stephen Pallets, I'm an EDC commissioner.
Oh, also, we got no snow.
Oh, that's right. How much snow did you get? How did you get
None.
no snow, Simon?
I'm in central Denver and there's nothing.
Unsuccessful snowstorm. Perfect. And then we have some guests on here that I know are supportive of ECE and a lot of the projects that we're doing. So Alethea, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Alethea Gomez. I'm the Director of Programs and Initiatives at Executives Partnering to Invest in Children, or EPIC.
Perfect. Chad?
Yeah, good morning. My name's Chad Rabin and I work with AECOM. I lead our program project management, and Latrice and I have visited previously, so excited to learn more about what's going on.
Thanks. Greg?
Hello there, I'm Greg Johnson. I'm a lawyer with Squire Patton Boggs, and Latrice and I have talked a lot about her programs, and I'm a strong supporter of what she does and happy to be on the call.
Thank you. Nathan?
Good morning, everyone. Nathan Batchelder here with CRL Associates. We're a local government affairs firm that works across the metro area and very supportive of all the great work that Latrice and the P3 are doing.
I love all this support. I'm just going to say that. Thank you guys. Thomas?
Hi, Tom John. I'm an attorney at the law firm Ice Miller, and just a supporter of what you're doing and observing what you're doing. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Perfect. And finally, Whisper. If you want, oh, she put it in the chat too. So she's, I'll introduce you for you. She is the owner of Unique Play Place, and she's one of the partners that we've been talking to about some potential use for early childcare. So I invited her to be a part of this call so she can kind of hear what we do and what we go through. So thanks, Whisper, for joining us. Appreciate it. And then finally, our UNC team that's in one square but is listed as Marshall.
Well, I guess I'll start then. Again, I'm Marshall Parks, and with UNC, I've been here for 23 years now, 22 years as the HR director, and now working with our leadership team on some faculty and staff recruiting retention projects like the exciting one we're here to talk to you about today. And I guess we'll go this way around the room.
Hi, I'm Dale Pratt. I'm the Vice President of Finance Administration and CFO here at UNC.
Hello, everybody. Andy Feinstein. I'm the president of UNC.
Hi, everyone. Scott Bright, owner of ABC Child Development Centers and Bright School Age Centers. Our organization has provided early childhood services to this community for over 54 years and has been instrumental in developing the new universal preschool program. We're excited to be here.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Almquist in the President's Office.
Good morning. I'm Kirk Licklider, AVP for Facilities Management.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Chase. I am the Interim Director of Human Resources. I can't claim having been involved in the proposal. Marshall's done a lot of that, but I'm excited to hear more about how this will impact positively impact our faculty and staff.
And I would also add, the only reason Kirk's here today is because we didn't have much snow. If we had snow as the director of facilities, we would not have seen him here today. So I'm glad we had that result so we can have Kirk with us today.
Perfect. We're glad that there wasn't a lot of snow either, because Kurt, you've been instrumental in this conversation. So we'll go ahead and kick off the UNC Early Childcare Project presentation. So as we had talked, this is the first proposal that we have received. So we're super excited to hear about what opportunities we have to potentially work with you all. UNC will go through a brief discussion about the details of the project for those of you who have not seen the proposal and not reviewed what the project is. And then we have some questions from commissioners. I know that we had some scoring, so all the commissioners have seen the proposal and probably have questions about the proposal. So we'll open it up for Q&A after you all are done talking through what you're doing and how you would like to get there. So Marshall, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
That's good. And I think I'll have Andy do a quick introduction to UNC, and then I'll do a brief overview of the project.
Thanks, Marshall, and thank you, Natrice, for the opportunity to talk to you about this project. It's very important for us, and it's something that we've been working on and thinking about for several years. In my conversations with faculty, students, and staff about the need for childcare services and support for our community, it's something that I've heard over and over again from various groups since I've been here for 4.5 years. And we started discussions with the governor's office about a year ago, listening to the governor, and certainly his priorities about early childhood development. This seemed to fit right in with those priorities. And so we said we want to be a part of this and find ways which we can obviously support the governor's priorities, the state's priorities, but also meet the needs of our community. It's a big part of our recruitment and retention efforts for not only our faculty and staff, but also our students. And it's going to be an incredible benefit and enhance kind of the faculty and staff experience on campus, but also provide support for young people in our community. We've got a lot of enthusiasm. That's why you see so many people here in this meeting, is because we are very enthusiastic about making this happen, and we're going to do everything we can to make it a world-class opportunity for our community. And you just met Scott Bright, who runs ABC Child Development. We've been working with ABC Child Development for, I think, decades here at UNC. And you're going to hear a little bit from Scott, but he's a leader in the community, an expert in childhood, care development. And this is going to be a great synergistic partnership, not only with ABC, but also our local school district, District 6, and our students. I mean, besides students utilizing the services, we have, I would argue, the best, education program in the state. We basically produce over 50% of all the degrees being offered in education in Colorado. We would like to, provide experiential opportunities for our students in that program, but also reach out into D6 for students that want to go into childcare development when they graduate high school and go into college. So this is an opportunity for a whole, host of communities to really benefit from this program. So I'm going to leave it there, Marshall. There's other things I should add, but I'm here to convey my enthusiasm and share with you how excited we are about the potential for this to occur in our community.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think to give a brief overview of the project for those on the call who haven't had an opportunity to read the broader document. I think Andy touched on a number of the things, but basically we're requesting funding to build a childcare facility on an underutilized space on our UNC campus to serve approximately 150 children. As Andy mentioned, we're partnering with ABC Child Development Centers, who, as Scott mentioned, have been providing high quality childcare in our community for 54 years. I said over 50, I learned today it was 54. Our proposed business model, I feel like, is solid and sustainable. Will generate revenue of about $240,000 annually that we intend to use to provide scholarships for student, faculty, and staff to offset some of their childcare costs. From a community perspective, as Andy said, City of Greeley, and particularly the east side of town, is considered a childcare desert and is bereft of the kind of necessary childcare to support our campus community. And providing quality on-campus childcare is one of the important campus initiatives we're working on to support the success of our student, faculty, and staff. I think it's a very important part. Additionally, I think it's going to expand the capacity of our community to support the state's initiative on early childhood education. So I think it's a nice connection there, as Andy mentioned. And as we talked about, the project creates some great opportunities for partnership with our outstanding College of Education folks both from an employment perspective, internship perspective, and they don't even need a car. They can just walk across the parking lot from the College of Education and from our residence halls and be a partner and part of this exciting project. And as Andy mentioned, we're preliminary conversations, and I thank Patrice for helping connect us with District 6 and our partners there that have some common interests, and I think common interests in educational opportunities for their students, common interest in childcare for their staff. And I've got a meeting with them again this week. I think Scott and I are meeting with them together later this week, and then meeting with their subcommittee of their wellness subcommittee that provides benefits in January to talk again about ways we might partner on this project and ways that might be mutually beneficial. I think we've identified a great, an excellent location with great access, easy in and out access. It's kind of a blank slate. It's a great spot that we're very much underutilized on campus. Patrice was able to come out and look at the site with us. As you know, for childcare, it's complicated. You need important indoor spaces and outdoor spaces, and I think we have really identified a great location that can meet all those needs, which isn't easy to do. And lastly, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. We're really grateful for your consideration, and I can assure you that if we invest in this project, it really will be life-changing support for our community, eliminating that barrier of childcare for the success of our students, faculty, and staff. And so, again, I much appreciate you all being here. Thanks for the opportunity. And Patrice, I think we'll open it up for questions, and we've got everybody here who can answer things. Feel good about that.
Thanks, Marshall. Commissioners, I want to open it up to you all first. If you had any questions from your scoring mechanisms, things that you wanted to talk through in regard to this project.
I'll jump off. One of the questions I had was, and I'm looking for it in the categories under sustainability. I didn't really see a lot of details in the operating plan to understand how the actual child care center is going to be able to operate into the future. So if you could give us a little more detail there, I don't necessarily need to see the financials, but I'd like to really understand that this is something that is going to generate enough revenue for the center to operate in the long term.
It's a great question. I think from a UNC perspective, and I'll have Scott weigh in, who's got 54 years of doing this. I think one of the things that was important to us is we want to have a model that is sustainable. We need a partner who can have it be financially beneficial for them and continue to operate and provide the high quality care. And I think what we want to do is calibrate our model so that as it ramps up and we get capacity, the model is going to basically bring back 15% of the total income that Scott receives operating the center will come back to the university, and then we intend to use that to again provide scholarships for student, faculty, and staff to it. So if it takes a little while for it to build up, Scott's not in a position where he has to write us a check for $250,000 no matter what his revenue is. The kind of that could put him in a position to maybe not be able to sustain this. So we built the model so that it is calibrated as it ramps up to full capacity. And we came to that amount, 15% of the total revenue, not by guessing, but by Scott's experience. And we looked at the costs of operating a child care center, what those variable costs are. And about 15% of the costs are directly related to the facility costs. And since we are providing the facility, that's the margin that I think Scott has in place that he knows as part of his sustainable business model for 54 years, that taking that 15% that he's saving by us providing the facility can provide back to us in order to support our faculty and staff. And Scott, would you add anything else to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Marshall brings up the facility costs of roughly 15% of what it costs to run the facility. The larger portion of what it takes to run an early childhood center is made up of 65 to 75% of it is personnel costs. And where do the funds come from to pay for that? Well, in my experience across 25 different licensed centers that we have right now, roughly 1/3 of it comes from private pay families. Another 1/3 comes from low-income tuition assistance from our local county through the CCAP program, and another 1/3 comes from preschool programs that we offer within our facilities. As you know, Colorado's headed towards a universal preschool system. It's pretty exciting for providers as well as school districts to work together and try to provide every single 4-year-old with essentially a free preschool experience. So we anticipate that portion of the financial statement to increase a little bit over time, whereas the private pay and the CCAP pieces would decrease a little bit over time. But we see those funding sources as very sustainable. If you look at where the funding comes from for universal pre-K through Prop EE that was passed a couple years ago, there's plenty of funds there to sustain UPK statewide on into the future, and there's lots of plans to make sure that is complemented or is complementing the local funding structure for early childhood and communities.
Is the private pay, does that capture the faculty and students that would be using the center on, and then I guess they get their benefit directly from the university through, I think you referenced it as a scholarship. Is that what you're referring to, or are you also, because I have another question around one of the things we have to focus on is community benefit, and are you setting aside some percentage of seats for children from the community outside of the university, which would be paying privately? Like, I'm just not totally understanding that.
Hopefully I can clear that up a little bit. So the tuition assistance for childcare specifically is designated for low-income families. You might find students at UNC to be eligible for those sorts of funding, and you might find faculty of UNC more in the private pay segment. So you mentioned, you kind of grouped faculty together with students. Mm-hmm. They both use UNC as their home, but essentially they probably come from different economic backgrounds, and so therefore they would use a combination of CCAP tuition assistance and also the private pay families.
What about folks outside of the university utilizing these services?
Yeah, so I think it would be a mistake to specifically only reserve seats inside of the facility for just UNC connected folks. The only way to make this sustainable down the road is to bring in community folks to help make sure that those classrooms are full. There again, if our costs to operate the center are 65 to 75% made up of wages of staff that are in the classroom, those classrooms have to be full to make that financial metric work. And so therefore reserving spots is nice, as long as there's a financial metric to help kind of pay for that reservation system. It's kind of like you go to a restaurant, some places they're going to charge you whether you show up for dinner or not, sort of thing. So, and that's how they survive, right? So I think that the community is going to play a big part in helping make sure that the long-term sustainability of the center is there.
Yeah. And I think at least initially from our, we previously ran a child care center now almost 20 years ago, not quite, but I suspect we'll be about half of the capacity of the 150. I think about half is probably going to be taken up by UNC faculty and staff. It's a little bit of an estimate, but I think we're in that ballpark. So I believe that about half of that community benefit will be about half that 150. And again, as we're talking with District 6, a lot of their very new staff and faculty, at the pay level that they're at, probably will be eligible for some support also.
So, but you will be opening the center to the broader community outside of UNC.
What we're saying is that roughly estimating about half of the people utilizing services in the center will be non-UNC employees.
Non-UNC, well, and non-UNC students as well. I mean, I just want to know if it's open to people that are not students.
With the university.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Not affiliated. Okay, okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I think it's particularly important where we are located in the community. In the eastern side of the community, I think there is more of a gap of childcare availability, and our location I think is beneficial too. In this part of the community, it really supports the area with higher need in our community.
Any other questions, Carrie?
I don't know if I was the only one with questions. I wanted to, oh, go ahead, David. I can
Okay.
always ask more questions. David, you take the floor.
I
I've
like
got a lot of
your
questions.
line of thinking though. So.
Yes, I've got a lot of questions. Who put together the budget for this?
I did Kirk and Facilities Management.
Okay, so maybe questions are probably for you, probably. So this is a takeoff budget, right? So would you agree that this is, do you guys have any contractors that have actually bid on this, or like your design, your designers or your, I'm used to seeing these and, with the divisions broken down in detail. So I'm just wondering, who put, there's a lot left to be desired, right? You guys are asking for $8 million and I just don't have any details on the construction costs that I'm really comfortable with. For example, I mean, you guys are at like $547 a square foot, which I don't know if that's high or low. We just built one of these on, the Western Slope. We were about $402. I know that construction costs are different everywhere. So I'm not saying that, they're wrong. I'm just saying that there leaves a lot to be desired, within those.
And I can fill some of those blanks. So we don't have a design yet. We have a program that identifies the amount of square footage for the total project. And it's broken down by the number of classrooms and such in working with Scott to come up with that square footage. So the building cost is based on $250 a square foot for 14,655 square feet. More specifically than that, we do have separate line items for utilities, the water sewer extension, electrical service, telecommunications, site work, new walks, curbs, that type of thing, landscaping, the playground furnishings, the fencing. So those items we've identified more specifically. The building cost itself is a cost per square foot. The remainder.
And I just want to jump in just for a clarifying question for Scott. Scott, what's the square footage you need per student?
It varies between 35 to 50.
Yeah, I've got what I utilized after talking to Scott is for the infants, we used 50 square foot per child, the toddlers 45 square foot per child, and the preschool age children 35 square foot each.
And then
so Scott, this is going to give you, it seems like this is going to give you a few thousand square feet for extra stuff, isn't it?
We always need room for a kitchen, food prep area, places for parents to come in, get signed up, front office area, director's office area, parent meeting area, storage area for food. Yeah, every time we design one of these and we go light on the square footage, we regret because we have all these offsite storage costs.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So you mentioned kitchens. So there's no budget in here for a kitchen, is there?
So there's a couple of different ways to handle food preparation. You can do it off site and then bring it on site, or you can have more of a commercially based kitchen and prepare the food on site. In all of our centers, we do breakfast, lunch, and snack. We have cooks pretty much everywhere that handle all of that, but there are different models. A couple of our sites we do transport and bring on. So in the end, it just depends on, how full service do you want this facility to be? And I think funding is going to dictate that.
And in this model, are you assuming it's going to be prepared somewhere else and just basically brought in, the food?
Well, in my estimation, if the funding is available, we can easily put together a kitchen on site. The square footage provides for that. And I think the budget would provide for that too. It's just a matter of penciling it in.
Gotcha. So you haven't included it. You're just kind of waiting to see what happens.
This is my first call with you guys, so.
No, I'm just asking. I know I know we got, some lawyers on the call. This is not a deposition. I'm just trying to get clarifying questions. Okay. So it seems, high per square foot, and I know it's a takeoff. I would just like to see a third-party contractor bid it and break it down by division, so we can see specifically. Same with,
So-
your A&E fees. I don't know if you guys are gonna bid it out or how that works. You guys are public, so you probably have to follow up public procurement, I'm guessing.
And so this total amount also includes contingencies, overhead and profit, a design contingency, the AE fees, the prevailing wage requirements, a premium to design to lead, the furnishings and equipment, environmental consultants, geotechnical, site surveys. So it's an all-in price.
Gotcha. I'm just trying to get at, you guys created the budget. You didn't have a third party create this budget.
So to that end, I used two other sources. Colorado School of Mines is constructing a center through cash funding, and I have their information related to their estimate and such, and so that's current pricing as well. Their budget's actually 9 million, but they have a more difficult site. Then I also had Adolphson and Peterson Construction work with me to come up with that basic $250 square foot price for the building.
Okay.
So again, without a design, nobody's done a takeoff by division, but a major general contractor did help me with the basic pricing.
Okay, and I see you mentioned contingency. So I mean, I don't know what best practice is going to be, but it seems like, 1% a month is what I'm seeing. So it's just an observation. I think that's low. I think that's about half of what it should be. And I'm not sure about prevailing wage. I'm guessing that's because you guys are public, so you have to have, Davis involved, right? Is that what that is?
Project over $500,000 has to use prevailing wage under new state law.
Okay.
Contingency I was referring to is a construction contingency, and for new construction, we typically use 5%. We do have another 5% for design contingency for the things we don't know about the building yet. And within the $250 a square foot, we have a little bit for 1 year's escalation to midpoint of construction.
Okay, so because I saw that down below, there was some additional comments in line 46. It just says escalation. So I'm assuming that's what you mean by that. You have it built into the core and shell cost of 250.
Correct. I have 1 year's worth. The bottom lines were, should I put more in? Questions
Yeah,
to myself.
no, and that's what I'm after. Like, what's the thought about kind of how you guys built the budget? So, and who did it and what'd you use? So,
The other thing
okay.
I'd add too, David, is Kirk's been in his position for over 30 years and has either built or remodeled, I believe, almost every building on this campus. And so, we do have a really experienced person in place on the construction side that's done a lot of state construction.
Yeah, I have no
too.
doubt
So,
about that. I just saw the budget. I'm like, hey, these guys are asking for 8 million, and I've got like a one sheeter, right?
I think we probably Kirk's asked for a lot of money from the state before, and this is probably the quickest and most abbreviated process to ask for.
Well, and some of it, it's the normal state process we have to follow, because we have to get the money before we have the design money to take it any further. So getting to the level of detail you're talking about in our normal process, we typically don't have, and we often have to work on a square foot basis for the initial request.
Totally understand. I'm just trying to get at, like, what was the thought with these numbers, so I can at least extrapolate more details than what I got, basically.
Yes.
Okay, what is the lead premium in line 34?
So leadership for environmental design is another state requirement. And so that typically comes with some extra costs. Ranges between 7 and 10% typically for us to get to lead platinum. Better mechanical system designs, better envelope designs and insulation, certain types of products that are more environmentally sustainable, that type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you don't have an environmental consultant, so you don't need a phase 1 for this, because you already did one. This is a parking lot, basically, right? You're putting.
Correct. It's a parking lot. And when we bought it in 1959, it was cornfield.
Yeah. Okay.
And since then, 7 to 10 foot of dirt out of it. We used it as a borrow site for when we built our stadium. So it's pretty virgin land.
I would think so. And then your geotech, obviously, I don't know if this is 2 stories or 1 story. I'm assuming that's just for your boreholes, for your, for your corners, right? That's not for because that seems really small. I mean, for a building.
Correct. It's just the soil testing to allow design to proceed.
Okay. And then what is UNC Construction Services? Are you going to basically charge a fee to UNC to do the project management?
We'll assign a project manager typically, and that was an allowance for that.
Got it.
And
Okay.
within there, it's where some of the required advertising and those expenses live. Some of the things, material testing during construction, soil compaction, concrete testing, that type of thing.
So you guys perform those services as part of this fee?
Or contract them out, yes.
Okay, gotcha. So you're charging for like someone to come out and test the concrete. You're charging for the time for you guys to come out and manage it, and kind of that thing is right.
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and then I guess just I'm not a concern, Scott, for you, but if you want a kitchen in this bad boy, it seems like it's not going to blow the budget, but it might be $300,000 or $400,000 to add a kitchen. So it would be nice to know if you guys are going to do that, because that cost going to go up to probably 8.3, 8.4, 8.5 million ish. I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of swagging it. What do you think?
Is this where I say, yes, I want one?
Well, if you're asking for 8 million, you might as well ask for 8.5. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I think, where would you get the food? I mean, it's really something you need to think about, because I would imagine, for a facility this size, you want to do it on site, but you guys, I know, are experts. I'm certainly not. So.
Yes, the answer is yes.
We do have, we have a pretty, large contract food service operations at our institution, which is just across the parking lot too, right? So it wouldn't be, outlandish to either have, our own operations run food service, and that's probably what some of the discussions have been versus having it in-house. And it really is trying to be, a cost mitigation issue. We're trying to be, thoughtful and considerate about, spending resources. And so, clearly if there's tremendous benefits of having a kitchen on site, but also I think, some of the, I'm sure discussions have been that we, also, feed roughly 10,000 people a day on campus as well. In addition to the on-campus dining, our food service folks also prepare senior meals for distribution throughout Will County every day. So they're very used to providing that type of service if we did want to do it as more of a catering kitchen instead of an on-site facility. So we have options there.
Yeah, that helps. That seems like kind of a fluid thing, and I understand your expertise allows for flexibility. So I'm not questioning it. I'm just asking why it wasn't in the budget and kind of what you were thinking, right? I want to switch gears and then I'll be done. I can turn it back over. Sorry for taking up so much time. I just want to discuss the proposed site. There's just a screenshot on it that I got. So this is proposed to be on a current parking lot at UNC, correct?
Yes. It's a parking lot on our west campus that is very underutilized at this point.
Okay, so I guess the question from my, I put, my developer hat on, I go, if you remove these parking stalls, what's going to happen to the use of the buildings that are next to it?
There's only a couple really small facilities that are adjacent to this parking lot. One of them's a cultural center. It's essentially a house. Most of the users of that center don't park at the center. They come from elsewhere on campus and what have you. So there's really nothing else out in that neck of the woods. It's kind of remote in that regard. The beauty of this site is that it gives us plenty of space to build what we need to and not have to compromise on the playground space, that sort of thing. It also gives us plenty of space for parking for staff as well as clients. And I think most importantly, it gives us a way to develop safe drop off and pickup zones. It's nicely situated in that regard.
Yeah, I could go ahead. The parking lot that he's referring to is not being utilized for those two adjacent facilities at this point in time. It's very few people who would frequent those two facilities would be parking in the space in reference for the childcare site.
Yeah, David, if you were here and saw the space, I mean, what you see is it's a very large parking structure, parking lot. It's basically adjacent to our football stadium. It's rarely used because it's a kind of outer perimeter of the parking for the football stadium. So even when we're crowded and full, we don't see a lot of parking in that space right now. It's got incredible ingress access to a major street. And and again, even like on a daily basis when I drive by there, it's just underutilized. It's like when we walked the campus and talked about where we would put this, all of us just looked at this location and said, this is where the center should be. It's like the perfect access points. It's not being utilized. It's flat. It's a parking lot. It's not going to interfere with students, faculty, or staff and their parking needs for the campus or a football game. There's not enough traffic or use of the States Art Child Cultural Center next door to inhibit access for students and staff and faculty to park there. So really, it's not going to have a negative impact on our parking needs for the campus, and it's got great access right off a major road. I mean, so we can imagine, like we said, if half of the people that are going to use this are not UNC students, faculty, and staff, these are people that are going to be dropping their children off as they're going to work. This provides like the perfect space to do that without disrupting traffic flow or other issues on campus.
Gotcha. And is the playground proposed to go to the right? There's a picture of a patio there. I'm assuming that's open space. I don't know. I'm just trying to extrapolate what that area is to the right of the image.
We have to have multiple playgrounds due to separation for the age groups and such. So the site gives us lots of room to put them depending on the ultimate layout of the building.
Okay. And I guess the cost to reroute all the curb or the existing parking lot, redo all the painting of parking stalls and everything, is that a separate budget that UNC is going to be paying for? Because it's only 75 grand here, and that's just for demo of the existing site, it looks like.
Yeah, I had in my mind allowed some of that for demo, and then there's another line item that adds back some of the curbing and such once the building's arranged and to create that new parking edge.
And I'm assuming, this is my last question, I'm assuming all of the utilities are already to all these lot lines because you have existing, do you have enough, capacity to build this building? I'm assuming yes, in 20th Street you're pulling it, or I don't know where you're pulling it from, but.
Correct. Most of the utilities come off of 20th Street. XL Energy has power lines that we tap off of at that site along 20th. City of Greeley has water and sewer lines in 20th that we would be utilizing. Atmos Energy, our local natural gas supplier, has lines in 20th Street. So we're pretty close to where we need to be for those.
And then just to follow up to that, so all the tap fees and everything, are those separate or do they waive them for you guys?
We have kind of a master agreement for our tap fees that insulates us from most of them.
Okay, makes sense. That could be a shocker, I think, sometimes when you get those fees, so. All right, that's all I had. Thank you, guys. Sorry for all the details. I just wanted the other commissioners to kind of hear more details than we got. Maybe they had questions that got answered too.
They're great because that's kind of what the challenge is, right? We've done a lot of the work internally and come to this point where this proposal, we haven't gone through like a project planning with hiring an architecture firm and design firm. Yeah, we would certainly do something like that, with the project, when it's underway. We've kind of utilized the expertise of our campus and the work that we've done. We have other projects that are going on right now as well. And, we kind of utilize that expertise to provide we would need to be a conservative and accurate estimate of the cost of the project.
Thank you.
No problem. I appreciate that. I'll turn it back over to Carrie. So thank
Well, before I do have a question, but I want to see if Simon or Steve have any questions first because they haven't had a chance.
Looks like
Yeah.
Simon has his hand up. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Simon.
I do. Thanks. The question I have, and I think you may have addressed this earlier, but I didn't capture it all, is what's the current facility and why do you need a new building? And is there anything that, yeah, I'll just start there.
At this point, we don't have a current facility on campus. So we don't have a childcare facility. It's been about 20 years since we did. We looked at that site to see if it was something we could reclaim. It's definitely not. I'll let Kirk speak a little bit more to the state of that facility, but it actually happens to be on the location that we're considering for our new osteopathic medicine school. So the remnants of that building weren't reclaimable. Kirk, if you want to speak to that a little bit more than.
Sure. So there was a 1961 era building that was a K-12 laboratory school on campus. And one wing of that building was the previous child care center. And due to the age, that child care center left campus, the whole K-12 school left campus 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And since then, the buildings have just been utilized for storage and what have you. And it's not suitable for reoccupancy.
I'm just trying to see if there's a cheaper way to get to the.
You and us both. Yeah.
And I see I think about the public-private partnership piece, and I think this is just a thought more than a question, but the ask is for the state to put up the full cost of the actual building, then the programmatic piece then comes in as the private partner. So I'm not quite sure. I guess maybe if there was a cost share on the building, I don't know. I feel like there's a different path, or there could be more of a creative path to help soften the burden. So the burden is shared across the private and public partnership, right? Just for specifically for the building, the physical building. From a programmatic perspective, I don't see a real. I mean, we've heard that there's going to be 50% of the facility of the occupancy is going to be taken up by university student and staff, but from a programmatic standpoint, I'm not seeing that there's going to be a guarantee that we're serving populations that are in high need for childcare, especially those who have accessibility and affordability issues. So I guess from a programmatic standpoint, I would like to see some assurances that outreach would occur and that there's a true connection to those who are experiencing lack of childcare, especially in the areas that you talk about in East Greeley and maybe North Greeley, where there happen to be more impoverished and of underprivileged backgrounds.
Just to speak to those two things that I heard really quick. The first is if it was up to me to pay for all or even part of this facility, there's no way I could do it. Childcare just can't support new construction anymore like we used to 25, 30 years ago. And to have a flagship facility that says here is how early childhood should be done is not something that early childhood can afford. And so it has to reach out to other sources to put that sort of exemplary facility together so that we can provide the service in it that I don't know, that is the best of early childhood. So that's kind of what we're looking to this for, is just say, to dream and say, what can this look like if everybody puts their heads together and we don't lean on just one or two sources. So, and then secondly, I have a childcare center about 4 blocks from this spot, and 90% of our clientele in that facility are low-income families that receive CCAP tuition assistance. So it's not a far stretch at all to think that of that 50% that comes from the community, 80 to 90 to 95% of them are going to be that low income tuition assistance families.
Well, just understand, like our student population, we have over 40% of our students are first generation to go to college. Almost 40% are Pell eligible, are receiving financial aid. Over 25% of our students are Hispanic Latinx, and that population is growing. We'll be a Hispanic serving institution in this spring. Over a third of our student population are underrepresented minorities. And I think that, it's the makeup of our student population certainly would be a large utilization of the space as well.
Yeah, and Atrice, I think my question kind of stands, and it's not necessarily, I think it's how we think about, the public benefit piece writ large, not necessarily. And, I don't want to come off as sounding negative at all towards the project. I just, these are just things I think you're one of the very first projects we're talking about. So it is also something new for us. But looking at how we look at physical facilities versus programmatic aspects, and how we're going to consider these things, and what the true purpose of the legislation that created this, what their true intent was. So I think that's something that we should continue to contemplate. But
Simon, just some questions for you. Would it be helpful to you, to have more data on the makeup of, the potential, people that will be utilizing the space? I'm wondering what.
So no, I think it's okay. Well, in my mind, what is the guarantee that space is going to be made available to those individuals? So in the instance where it becomes a very desirable place to leave your kids, then it becomes, again, for lack of a better way of describing it, a country club for Greeley's rich and famous. I'm going going an extreme here, but again, I think it's, how do we assure, given the state's investment and the idea that it's with the sole intent that it's going to have a public benefit for the community to solve problems around childcare access, how are we going to make sure that it remains accessible? The affordability issue is not our issue in terms of how we fund these individuals who don't have the resources to afford childcare. That is, as you mentioned, there are other programs for that. But how do we, as an investor, make sure that the facility remains accessible to those individuals? And I don't see any guarantee that that's the case, other than just the population is there, which I believe it's there. You don't have to prove that to me. I think I know that, and I believe you. It's just, what is the guarantee that they're going to remain to have access, because the state is making this investment, or would be making this investment specifically for that purpose?
So Simon, I can probably get in trouble here for my team here, so forgive me for saying this, because I know that there's a need certainly to have enough people utilizing the space to make it financially viable. There's also an expectation that, as I'm hearing from you, that you want to ensure that there's access and available space for the families that have the most need. And so we need to find a way of doing that, to guarantee or to provide access to these families, ensuring that a significant portion of the people that are utilizing this, have financial need. Is that what I'm understanding you're saying? That's the kind of guarantee. Again, I'm not saying that I haven't figured out how to do this, but we could say something like half of that we will set aside a certain portion of our utilization, given the parameters of need, ensuring that a certain percentage of participants are following. I forgot the CCAP. The CCAP, like there's 50% of the available spaces are guaranteed for CCAP family, something like that, right? Is that what you're talking about, Simon?
Yeah, I think that's, I think, one way of addressing what I'm talking about.
Simon, I think too, one of the, we've been part of this community for 130 some years here at UNC, and really do feel a responsibility to our community. And I think the best evidence is Scott's real example that 4 blocks from here, 90% of the people that use that facility are seat. So I know that will be part of the makeup of this. And to be fair, we're not a fancy university on the hill where our average salary on our staff is about $45,000 to $50,000. It's not $150,000. So I mean, I think even the people we're serving on our staff and faculty and staff are also in that position where they're working and still having a very challenging time justifying working to even pay for childcare. So I think just the makeup of Greeley and who we are as a community is really a lot of what you'll see. And then absolutely we can do something to make that more clear and overt intention of our proposal. Appreciate that.
Can I actually extend Simon's question, because you keep mentioning the facility that's 4 blocks away. And as I recall from the presentation materials, I think the university had been subsidizing in some fashion use of alternative facilities, these other facilities that are around since you don't have a child care center. So what happens to that program when you build this? Are we going to wind up with families that are, successfully using the one that's 4 blocks away who are not a member of the community, but that one that's 4 blocks away has to close because the university is no longer providing that subsidy to families who maybe they can't get into the one on campus and they can still use the other one, but are you going to provide the same support, or what happens? Because there's a consequence to this, right? Is you open the brand new one, the country club version, and then we have what's currently available. What's the impact on that and the people in the community that are needing those facilities? Are we gonna wipe out the one 4 blocks away?
I wish we had that much capacity for early child care in Greeley that adding a facility had some impact on another facility, but I don't think we're anywhere near meeting the needs of our community. And I can defer to Scott. He's got 25 of these.
Yeah, to speak to that, that's kind of why I'm at the table, is to make sure that the boat doesn't get lopsided. That facility is part of our heritage. That's where our organization started 54 years ago, is in that center. So
the one that's 4 blocks away, is that what you're referring to?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And we don't want to see that situation happen. So being involved in this process and designing, a great center that's 4 blocks away, I want to make sure that it provides the solution for the community that it has the space for. Currently,
I guess my question's a little different because it has to do with what we understand about the operating costs and sustainability, and the operating costs come from people using the facility, and it sounds like 2/3 of those are subsidized. And so is that subsidy, the piece that's being provided currently from the university, is that going to go away?
Okay, so to clarify, the university is not providing that subsidy. So
you're not doing anything for people using the other child care center? No. I misunderstood something.
We have providers who offer a discount to our employees based on being a UNC employee, that they've made a business decision to offer a discount. Providers, including Scott, have over time provided discounts, but the university is not providing any of that. Yeah.
So maybe to give you an example that might help clarify this a little bit, that center that's 4 blocks away, we offer a tuition discount of 5% to UNC employed individuals. And of the 150 kids that we have in that facility, maybe 5 to 8 of them are UNC faculty. So I just don't see the UNC piece having an effect on that center 4 blocks away.
What capacity and latent demand? That's also what Carrie's talking about, is what's the latent demand in a community for
daycare, childcare.
For sure, and just going to the Colorado Children's Campaign Kids Count data that's pulled together every year will show that Weld County and Greeley in particular is a childcare desert, which means that for every child of 0 to 5 age, 2.5 of them, how does it go? There is less than half of the capacity exists than there are the number of kids of that age group. So that those sorts of factors go into determining whether an area is a childcare desert or not. And Weld County, Greeley in particular, is definitely considered a childcare desert. So there is not enough spaces out there for the number of kids that exist. They may not be in our centers or in our situations primarily, but it's because the parent hasn't made the choice to go to the center, or they're maybe leaving their 3-year-old at home with an aunt or grandma or something like that, or just leaving them at home alone. And so I feel like with UNC's involvement, we can really reach those communities and provide that option for families that are like, okay, yes, I definitely trust this scenario, I trust this situation, and UNC is a partner in the early childhood upbringing of my kid.
Does that answer your question, Carrie?
It does, but then it's like, well, you're saying out of 150 kids, only 5 to 8 are from the university. Makes me scratch my head and go, I understand that you've got a population of kids eligible for, of the right age group. And I understand studies saying there should, I don't know if it's there is demand or there should be demand. But the whole sort of putting state assets towards this program, I'm very concerned about making sure that the program is successful. Because, what are you going to do with that building? Probably plenty of uses for a brand new building if this doesn't work. And to Simon's point and my earlier concerns is we're supposed to be looking at broader community benefit. And I recognize that with early childcare, which is so critical and so important to us, and I'm so glad we're looking at this project. There's some level of unpredictability about what you're going to actually have happen.
No, the unpredictability is probably 5 to 10 times greater when you look at the impact of universal preschool and what's about ready to roll out next fall. I've been very involved in the development of that over the last 3 to 4 years. Currently on the Rules Advisory Council for the Department of Early Childhood, and we're looking at that really closely. And we anticipate quite a number of providers, existing current providers, that choose not to play the UPK game, so to speak. And there's going to be a lot of providers that just don't want to provide that service for 3 to 4-year-olds because of the state's involvement. I happen to be on the other side of that, and I'm looking for more space because I know that the demand for universal preschool is going to be quite large, and the current facility availability for universal pre-K is going to be, the demand is going to far exceed the facility supply. And so let's say, take the example into consideration that a portion of those families at my center 4 blocks away come to the new center at UNC. That means that all of those spaces, or those vacated spaces at my existing facility, will then become available for the new UPK program, the very high demand that we're going to see and the lack of facility space that is out there. So UPK is going to change the game very significantly for school districts as well as childcare providers. There will be a good portion of folks that just choose not to play the game. I read an email this morning of a local school district here in Weld County that does not want to take up universal preschool here in Weld County. They don't want to do it because of the constricting environment that the Colorado government is essentially putting on UPK. And they just don't want to do it, right? Which means that those families need to come somewhere for that service. So I see a very high demand for space, really, for UPK coming up in the next 1 to 2 years.
And I also want to be respectful of Kurt's time because I know he has a meeting that he has to go to after this, which is why we put them first. I want to pause because it sounds like we're going to have additional questions that we'll have for you, university, before we vote on this particular project. So what I'll do, Steve, did you have any questions as a commissioner that we may not have touched on or answered? I want to make sure I give you space to do that. And we have one question from the public as well.
No, I appreciate the questions that have come in. I thank my colleagues for kind of hitting all the points, and let's let the public weigh in as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Alethea, did you want to go ahead and ask your question from Epic?
Thanks, Natrice. Thanks so much, guys, for this presentation. My questions really relate to the financial model. In a center of this size where you'll be needing to hire on 50, 60 teachers, maybe more if you have a commercial kitchen, how are you thinking about staff salaries, recruitment, and retention within this model for a value proposition for those workers? I know you mentioned earlier that 15% of your profits would go to scholarships for students, et cetera, and that equated to $240K. So is it right to assume that you're expecting $1.6 million in profits year over year at run rate for this center?
Sure, Scott wishes it was profits. Let him talk to it.
Typically in a scenario like this, like there is no profit. And I think the unfortunately, it works that way. Any sort of wealth that's developed inside of the early childhood world is more in terms of owning the real estate and watching the real estate change value than it is any sort of a net profit at the end of the day. It seems to me, looking at center over center over center, that is the common denominator. And when the facility is not owned by the operator of the center, that probably takes away from any chance of profitability in the end. So what you have to do at that point in time is just keep the boat in balance, keep the boat afloat, keep it working. And so the revenue piece, that then if we're paying rent to UNC for the facility, I think the metrics of that formula are that they're going to use a portion of that for scholarships for their families.
So are they planning to rent? Sorry. Oh, I was just saying, I did ask about workforce salaries before, if you could talk about the range there. And then, yeah, I don't want to take up too much time to trace, but I do have other questions after that. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
And I'll just touch on that really quick. So it is a low pay industry. It's typically made up of a workforce that doesn't have a lot of post high school education. Right now, to be a lead teacher in a classroom, it doesn't take more than about 2 college courses and about 500 hours of experience. On the flip side of that, we'd love to see a high educated professional workforce at the same time. My wage range right now for the current tuition that we charge is anywhere between minimum wage if you're just starting all the way up to $35 an hour if you're a seasoned teacher and moving to a director of a center. So that is the wage range right now, and the revenue of the center very much dictates the wages that we can pay. I would love to pay $100,000 a year to every single teacher or staff person that we have, but the revenue just doesn't justify that. So we do what we can.
I think to add to that, one thing we talked about earlier is because of our expertise in education and our College of Education Behavioral Sciences, it is our plan to utilize opportunities for our students who want to go into early childhood development to use this as an access point for internships and for employment. So we do see a pipeline of having qualified, educated student workers also participating in this program. And also, I know we're working and talking with District 6 and creating pipelines and pathways for students there also who are just going into childcare.
Thank you so much. And what percentage of infants and toddlers do you have in your current financial model against the total student population? Is it less than 45%?
I think the center is how many classrooms?
2 for each, 2 infants, 2 young toddlers, 2 older, 2 young pre, 2 older pre.
So roughly half of the facility is the infant toddler 0 to 3 range.
Okay, and then finally, will the facility be rented out at market rate to the provider or cost per square foot all in?
Yeah, I mean, I think our estimate of that is that 15% estimate is that's what we're anticipating. Again, we would have to negotiate, do an MOU, an operating agreement, et cetera. But that's the placeholder we have for that now, right? Is that 15% of revenue.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, again, the last thing is, this is not like, we're not looking at this to be like a revenue generating model. This is about providing a service to our community.
Yes, that's why I was an eyebrow raiser earlier. I was like, did they just say 240? Oh.
Yeah, yeah, we've explained that.
So Alethea, if you have additional questions, if you'll send those to me via email, we can bring this back up. What I would ask at this point, I don't know that we have enough information to vote. I think we have a couple of questions that we want to continue to have. I have cost of construction, a little bit deeper dive there, the public benefit component, and then the financial piece that Alethea had asked about from the standpoint of salaries, retention, recruitment, and then to Simon's point, more into the how will the community benefit be something that's addressed through the programmatic standpoint. What I'd like to do is ask that I schedule a call with Marshall, Kurt, Scott, like we always do, like additional conversations. I took copious notes so we can address some of the concerns. It sounds like you all have a meeting with District 6 in January, so I'm not sure if we schedule you back on the agenda for January or if we bring you to the February meeting to give you time to get the answers. We can determine that. We don't have to decide that right now.
Can you add one more, Natrice? My last question was going to be around guardrails for what happens if this partner fails, the one operating the child care center, just sort of the whole downside. How do we ensure that the programming of a child care center continues in a sustainable way as things change? So I don't know if that's, that's just in their operating agreement. It's in something on the a land use restriction agreement. I just sort of how is the state protected against the downside that we spend $8 million and then this becomes part of the osteopathic education center in the future?
Absolutely. So I've got sustainability, public benefit, and cost as our things that we want to. Oh, go ahead, Simon. Sorry.
Sorry, no. I was interrupting you. So I guess, there's another question I think that we need to discuss among the commissioners, which is, how are we different than the Capital Construction Committee at the state legislature? Because we're not, right? And the whole intent of this program was to be a partner or be the nexus for the private sector who could be providing services such as childcare in this instance, or enhancing broadband services. So, the idea that it's just, the appearance that to me is that it's a straight out grant to build a facility. Yes, there's going to be childcare taking place there, but in a traditional, if we're just building a facility, the analogous situation with a P3 in the highway space would be, how is the state going to recoup its costs to be able to pay for that road? And in this case, I'm not seeing that element of it in what we would see as a traditional P3. So I'm just asking the question as to how we want to create this model, because it will set a precedent for those who come in the future to say, oh, well, you guys built a building there, we need a building here. And then now we're looking at, is the true need of childcare the facility itself, or is it more programmatic based, or is it, it's probably not one of these alone, but because they all go into the costs of running a facility for childcare. But I just, I can't wrap my head around that as it relates to this project, and as it relates to our mission as a P3 entity.
That's fair. I think in statute, one, Simon, we can't in statute, I'm not able to grant, right? So it has to just be the funding costs provided. And the term grant hypothetically can be looked at from a different perspective of like, are we granting the money and requesting any reporting back? We would require some sort of reporting in regard to how they're providing services and care. I think the difference between this committee and the CDC is that the CDC, we would still need, even if we voted to approve this project, which we won't do today, but if we voted to approve it, we still have to go to CDC to request alternative use for that site. And so if they were to tell us, yes, you can do this, and you're repurposing this parking lot, they could also say no and say we're not approving that, and then we're not actually able to move forward with the project if we're not able to get approval from CDC. So I think that that's something we need to tackle, and that's why we want to make sure we get all the information from this group so that when we go to CDC,
Yeah,
we have enough
exactly.
information to make a decision.
Exactly, which is why I'm asking the question now. You know, and I know our friends at UNC are probably feel uneasy about my questions, but I think it's something that we have to talk about now before we go to that, or, you know, we get to that stage, and then all that work is for naught.
Well, I would say we're excited to be first, and we knew there'd be some bumps with being first too. So yeah, it's we're glad you're taking this so seriously, and so are we. And yeah, we'll make sure we answer all your questions.
No, Simon, I really appreciate your perspective. You know, I present in front of the CDC every year. I just did that last week, right? And so for capital projects on campus, I go back and think about how this whole project and how this conversation started. We know we have a need for childcare in our community. We know that. We know that the university is not capable of building a facility to serve that need. And we know, talking to our private partner, that they're not able to build a building as well, but they can provide the services. The ROI for me is the services that we're providing these families and their students in our community. It's not a business model for us, but the truth is that if the state does not support financially the capital improvement, we're not going to have a child care center be able to service our students. It's just that we don't have the resources to do that, and the business model that would actually allow us to afford to do that. That's how kind of the whole project came about, and the idea of really coming to this, calculus is the ROI is really the student and the families, and our desire. We know we have a need and desire in our community, and we have a partner that would want to do that. But it really isn't like, building like an academic building or a classroom for campus where we're actually, serving students at the university.
Thanks for that. So what I'll do is I will send over a very long email to my partners at UNC about the things that we want to capture, schedule a follow-up call to go through this with the program, potentially bring this project back either January or February to talk through some of the additional questions. And for the public, if you all have additional questions, please send those to me via email so I can address those and have that so we come through with a full the ability to answer all the questions, which I think UNC did a great job today doing so. So thank you for having your team. And then if you all want to stay on, you're more than welcome to, but if not, we give you the ability to drop off, and I'll be in touch.
We appreciate your time.
No, I greatly appreciate all the comments. Gave us a lot to do and think about as well. Very helpful to understand your perspectives, particularly, thank you, Simon, Carrie, and David, for your thoughtful comments and suggestions. We're going to do our due diligence and come back with some responses and feedback to those inquiries as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks.
Thanks, Team UNC.
Thank you.
Okay, we have additional topics that are on this agenda, which we're about 40 minutes behind, but it's okay because we have
Sorry.
It's okay. No, they were good topics of discussion, and I'm actually glad that we were able to get answers to those questions. And it also helps us know what types of questions we'll be asking, because our next proposal that's coming through is another early childcare project. So we are generating some interest, you guys, which is really cool.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good problem to have. Natrice, I was wondering if it might be worthwhile too. Is there a better practice in this space? That, what is it? What kind of P3 exists today in the nation that services childcare that we could just reference?
Yeah, that's a great question, Simon. I actually learned about it and it's in my next update from the conference that I attended. So there's a consultant that has done some projects similar to this, but a lot of the social infrastructure projects just haven't, like they aren't there. So what I was thinking about is bringing in January, one of the consultants that has done an early childcare project on a university property out on the East Coast to talk to us about what Maryland has done in regard to that. When I was there, we talked a little bit about including operations and maintenance into the proposal requirements so that some of those questions that you all have, specifically Simon, to your question, they talk about DEI, they ask questions about like, how are you actually servicing the types of organizations and the types of people that are really intended to receive the assistance that's necessary. And so your question about how do we ensure that people outside of the university, I think it was you and Carrie and David that asked that question of how do we really ensure that this isn't just I love how you use the country club for childcare in the area. How do we ensure that it doesn't turn into a very exclusive and not inclusive environment? So maybe we add that question to everything, and under community benefit, we add that question of asking them to explain more about how that community impact and how they're going to be inclusive in their practices. But I think we don't have a ton of examples across the country from what I learned at the P3 conference and also just talking with some of the consultants on early childcare, so to speak. So I think one of the things that we're working with EPIC on is looking at how the financing model works or does not work for the industry and how we figure out what if state were to have land, and Alethea asked this question of what's the rate at the 15% discount, can we make those mathematic numbers work? Or is there another formula that works really well? And they actually have a finance group that's working through what is the right formula for how to make early childcare work without offering a significant discount or such a deep discount that you can't actually operate the facility.
Can you add on to that? Because I totally agree. And when I asked the question, I didn't get a very satisfactory response. But one of the big new variables would be universal pre-K and whatever the government requirements, the state requirements are. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that these kinds of facilities are highly regulated and becoming more and more and more expensive to operate. So are they contemplating that in their model? Because it felt a lot like, hey, you know, we're going to get this 15% back from them, you know, out of their operating costs, which is roughly what they would pay for their facility, and the rest will just work out. It will just work itself out. And I did, it was kind of cold comfort for me. I'm focused on this thing has to last and be sustainable. It has to work, and it has to work for the broader community, because I think that's the remit here.
Yeah, I understand. I'll ask that question when I meet with them about how that impact, because the answer about, you know, it's not concerning, but it is a conversation I think we should have about one of the school districts wanting to opt out. So like, how does that impact what's going on in Greeley? Thanks, Steve, for joining. How does that impact what's going on in Greeley? And if it's the school district that they're working with, what does that mean for demand? And what does that mean for who is going to go to that center? So,
and are they shifting cost from the school district that the school district is supposed to be supporting if we're going to have universal pre-K? Are they shifting costs without shifting dollars to support it?
Okay.
I'm scratching my head because they closed down a child care center 20 years ago, and child care has always been an issue. So what happened? Why, you know?
They closed it down, Carrie. I can speak a little bit to this. They closed it down because they were actually operating it as a university, and they weren't able to keep up with the number of individuals that needed to be there. So it didn't work out. The state, I'm not going to say the state shouldn't operate, but we should stay in our lanes about what we do well and what we don't do well. So that's one of the things that they recognize, which is another thing to one of the questions that was asked as to why they're not currently going to use a building that already existed. They operated that center as a university and just didn't have the capacity to understand what the needs were. So now we're in a space where they're going to a provider from lessons learned to figure out how to operate it more effectively.
Outsourcing.
Good discussion. I'm excited about this.
Okay. Teresa, so I'm just going back to like the statute, and I think I'm gonna have to just go back and read it, but it's some fun bedtime reading, I know, but the charter that we have, again, like I was saying with them on the call, and I wanted to make that point with them there, but you know, it really just feels like we're giving money out to build the building. And, you know, like it's there, you know, and it seems like to me, as it is today, that company who, you know, the child care facility and the programs can run at their current facility. You know, is it just the expansion that we're looking at and wrapping my head around $8 million from the state with no real return, right?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to get like, even if we were getting the rent back to pay for the facility, or even cut to partner to get the costs back, and then it becomes a partnership. In this case, it's just us giving the money, the state giving the money, but
Well, the state, and it's more because the state's also subsidizing some of the people who are accessing and using the facility.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's just cost.
Yeah. So it's not doesn't just feel like a P3 to me. Again, I care about the mission. I think it's important. Obviously, childcare is a big issue, but the structure of this does not feel P3-ish.
We'll have to work on the structure. One of the things that I've talked to them about is figuring out how to not ask us for 8 million and how to subsidize some of those costs, because when we originally started, and I said that better, but originally started the conversation at a $5 million construction cost, but with inflation, that's the number that we got to. And David, to your point, like, I would love to see those numbers more hashed out from a perspective of a construction consultant or an organization that can actually build it versus, and Kurt's great. He's got information about how to do facilities, how to rebuild everything, not downplaying that at all. But if we had more numbers that were not just estimates, I don't know that it would be 8 million. Would it be in excess? So we're trying to bring in foundation and philanthropic money as well. So I do have, I'm going to have a conversation with the philanthropic partners in January who do fund early childcare capital construction. And so could we bring those dollars in to help subsidize some of the costs so that the state's not putting out 8 million, maybe we do 3, maybe we do partial.
Yeah. So I think maybe I didn't explain myself but it's not even so much, okay, $8 million. I don't even if it was $1 million and the state was not, it was just the state alone giving out the $1 million for a facility, it's still building the building.
Right.
It's not a like fee, like if they were paying even $500 a month for the rent, then the state would recoup those, at least a portion of the costs that they're divvying out. You know, so it's, again, like, yes, the state is still paying for the facility, but there's at least some recoupment of costs or some partnership that exists that actually makes the deal viable. Otherwise, it just is a grant program.
Right. And part of in our guidelines, one of the things that we put is there has to be revenue generation. So that dollar amount that they're getting of that 15% or such, we would have to discuss it goes into the unused cash fund and not back to the university, right? So that's a conversation that we would need to have with them on the fact that the money, the generation of revenue does actually allow us to recoup it, even though it won't be fast. It won't be a fast recoup of dollars. It does allow that money to go back into the unutilized cash fund, which is what we're doing with Summit Village, where that proceeds of that sale come back to this program so that we can reuse that money to do more projects. So yes.
That's a partnership. That's a partnership.
Correct. Okay. Any more discussion on this project? I got it. Got all the things. Lots of notes. Okay. One quick update for you all. The program manager position was a failed solicitation. We did make an offer to one of the candidates and we just weren't able to meet on salary, as well as wanting a larger team for that person to supervise at their point in their career. So we will be reposting that position at the beginning of the year. I don't think that the solicitation was written incorrectly. I think we got good candidates, we got good interest, but we're going to repost that job because I didn't have a solid number 2 that I would have picked. And I want to make sure we get the right person in this role. So that job posting will go back out at the beginning of January. So just a real quick update on that.
And Latrice, I do apologize. I didn't realize that if we do interviews, we had to be for the So now that I know that, you can still count me back in. So.
Let me explain that. Thank you.
I think I
appreciate
let
that.
you down a lot, and I really apologize.
You did not let me down at all. So with the state job postings, because this is a classified position, if you are going to volunteer to help with the interviews, you have to be on all of them so we can create a consistent experience for all candidates. So what we'll do is I will put blocks on your calendars. We'll post the position first. I'll know when it closes. I'll put blocks on calendars, but if you're unable to make any of those, let me know so I can move those dates, because if it was an unclassified position, I can absolutely have a couple of you here and a couple of you there, but it has to be, since it is a classified role, we do need to have a consistent experience for all applicants. So I will count you in, David. Thank you very much. And I will send you new dates probably towards the beginning of the year. Perfect. Any questions on that? Cool. Just a few quick conference updates. So I told you all I was going to DC. It was super great, except for I got stuck on the runway for 2 hours in a plane, but we moved past that. It was windy in DC. In Atlanta, I could not take off. So besides that plane experience, it was a great conference. We had a couple things that we discussed that I'm actually going to send out to you to take a look at, because I want to, generate the conversation about O&M, project delivery. To Simon's point, like, is this we can't just make this a grant program, it has to be some sort of generation of funding. So there's 3 boot camps that I attended while I was there. One of them was on inclusion of operation and maintenance into the project, so that the programmatic costs, how they're going to maintain it, and the sustainability model. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to send to you, lots of fun reading. So Simon, in addition to statute, you'll have some more reading that you'll have to do. We also looked at project delivery and financing mechanisms. So those are the other 2 workshops that we attended. I learned a lot about that. Our program will now be part of the AI P3 Direct program, which will allow for us to attend conferences, get some more insight from a lot of different partners across the country. So it was a really great conference for me to go to. So I'm really excited to be able to apply some of that knowledge to our P3 work. In addition, there's a task force that is starting in Atlanta, Georgia, that will be advisory and such across the country on how to stand up P3 offices. And so the chief of staff had asked if we would want to be a part of that. So what I'll do once I get more information is bring him to this conversation, into one of the meetings, to kind of talk through how we would be advising mayors and governors across the country on how to stand up P3 offices. So it's kind of cool to be a part of that conversation from a national level. So more to come on that information. They probably won't start it up until end of first quarter of 2023 calendar year, but expect that conversation to come this way. So that was super exciting as well. So that's from the conference. The other piece that I wanted to just give you a quick update on for the governor's budget and the program updates, as we talked about, there is a budget proposal that you all probably saw in the press release from the governor. And if you didn't get that press release, tell me and I'll forward it to you. Talking about an additional $15 million to this program. And so that, which is super exciting. I always love more money, but I love more money to do more things. So that $15 million is inclusive of one of the projects that I will bring to you probably the end of fiscal year or beginning of next fiscal year, which is known as Dow Junction. And that is a project that has been an ongoing conversation in Eagle County, located where we have some of our CDOT employees. We're looking at doing a potential project there that involves private partners as well as the county, the towns that are all surrounding that area. So Avon, Eagle, Vale, to build workforce housing for that particular area. They are about 5,900 units short of affordable or workforce housing in that county. So one of the projects that'll be coming up, but we're looking at, as you saw in the governor's proposal, that particular bill will probably hit the ground towards the beginning of session. So excited about that. The other piece is I will be presenting next Monday with Nathan and team at CRL and Associates to talk through kind of what it is that we're doing in P3, get some more jazz out there about the opportunities that we have on our 4 pillars, and answer any questions from developers that they might have in regard to what we're doing at the state level. So thanks, Nathan, for that opportunity. Thursday, you all will receive a presentation from myself and CTIO about Burnham Yard. So I will just save that for Thursday. I'm sure you'll have questions, but we will do a presentation to you all on what we're doing currently with the transportation study and how it impacts the money that you had approved for the project. So more to come on that. And then finally, we have a proposal that I'll ask us to look at. So I will send this to you all probably, I want to say I'll send it to you a week in advance, but if I can get it together, I might send it 2 weeks in advance because I'm out of the office the last week of January. So the town of Stratton has submitted a proposal for funding for an early childcare center in that area. So David, I can send it to you, but you may or may not vote on it because I know you're very familiar with it. So we might want to recuse.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I probably just won't be on the call. I don't know how we do that. I don't even know what project it is, but
okay.
I have a suspicion. I just don't know. However you want to handle it, you know, Carrie, you guys let me know. It's easy as it.
You ask good questions, David. I don't really want to lose your questions. So
I think, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm a pain, but I'll probably have the same questions for them anyway.
Right.
Actually. So
what we'll do, how about we look at it on a case-by-case basis, but I'd still like to send it to you. So if there are questions that you have, maybe you can send them to me via email, but you just won't vote on it. You can just
no problem. You let me know if you want me to be on the call or not for that particular presentation.
Perfect. Cool. All right. That's all I have. That's pretty much a ton of stuff. I know, Jess, you had an update from OEdit that you wanted to give real quick.
Hey, thanks, Natrice. Great to see the commissioners and look forward to seeing you on Thursday and hearing about Burnham Yard and such as well. And David, I know you're coming in person, so that's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, the update I want to give you, it's not anything to make any decisions on. And I think we've started to talk about this a little bit in some of the earlier meetings, but it's coming in a little bit sharper focus to me. And there's an idea that this could be a tool that could potentially be combined with the work that you all and Natrice are doing. Natrice, I know you've heard a lot about this, but I think this is a good update for you as well. So I think many of you or all of you are familiar with Proposition 123. I think probably most of us voted on that one way or another, but it was a proposition that took 0.1% of state sales tax and diverted it to an affordable housing finance fund. And then and by the way, it debruced a slice of revenue that all of that revenue could be, if there's a Tabor surplus, that revenue wouldn't have to be returned to the taxpayers. And 60% of that funds actually was provided to OEdit with what I'll call sort of fiscal and oversight responsibility, which could amount to, in the first half year, $135 million. And then going forward, it could be in the range of $300 million over time, a year. So just think a huge amount of money. Now, the EDC does not have any formal oversight role. It's a housing program. And OEdit's kind of figuring out, we would probably hire a bit of internal staff. But basically what the statute instructs OEdit to do is to hire a third-party administrator. So think of us as having a high-level oversight role from an OEdit perspective and a contracting role, and I'd say program development and accountability, but really the implementation would be done by this third party. And it sort of strongly hints that third party would be CHAFA based on the description of the third party's capacity. And indeed, we are strongly considering hiring CHAFA for that. And we're starting to have policy conversations. The governor's office is weighing in. And some of you may know Eleni Angelides, who is sort of a legislative director in the governor's office and also really involved in housing policy. And so we've been having conversations with her. And one of the things that she mentioned to both OEdit and to CHAFA's leadership is the governor is interested in ways that 123 could partner or feed into what you all are doing from an affordable housing perspective. And in particular, there's probably multiple ways this could happen. 123, I'm just going to look on, it offers 3 different types of programs. And then each one has sub-programs under it. And then, by the way, DOLA, the Department of Local Affairs, would get 40% of the money that it would implement through its own programming. But there's 3 main programs that OEdit has access to, or would be contracting potentially with CHAFA to run. And I'm just going to pull this up real quick here. The one that's been flagged, and Natrice, you may have other ideas about other programs, but one of the things that's been flagged is there's a land banking program. And it would be, again, administered by a third-party administrator, and it would provide grants to local governments and loans to nonprofit organizations that have helped to provide affordable housing to acquire and preserve land for development of affordable housing. And so the question is, could these loans and grants be used along with the public-private partnership, maybe to assemble, adjacent parcels that need to be assembled for a child care facility, or to otherwise facilitate the work that you all are doing here? So I just want you to be aware of this. Like, this may come into some of our future conversations. There's also a concessionary debt and a concessionary equity program. There's provisions under that to provide housing down payment assistance or for tenants in affordable projects, so that over time they build up, some ability to make a down payment and buy their own housing and things like that. So there's a whole range of different programs under this, but because it overlaps with the affordable housing goal that you guys are working on, just wanted to make you aware of it and know that this is a tool that we're hoping to figure out a way to coordinate. And there are a whole series of different, obviously, housing programs. DOLA runs a lot, CHAFA runs a lot. And there's even this new middle income housing authority that OEDIT is involved in. And so there may be opportunities for collaboration. And so we want to just make sure we're sort of staying aligned. And Teresa, we do hear your name sort of all the time on every initiative. It's like, oh, you need to make sure you're in touch with the public-private partnership initiative. So just wanted to flag that for future possible coordination and opportunities.
It's good to be liked and mentioned in meetings like that. Like, I love being mentioned in meetings where there's more money, right? I think, one of the things that we're hearing, Jeff, and maybe we talked through this, and I'm like being funny, but also serious at the same time. When we've been looking at the mixed use development piece, one of the things that the developers have been talking to me about is like, where is the benefit of them partnering with the state if they're not going to be able to make any money off of it, right? So if we could have some sort of opportunity to have commercial use and affordable housing, which is one of the things we're looking at doing with Steamboat, which is another project that you'll hear about probably in February. Alethea is really excited about that one. The Steamboat property is state land owned by CDOT that we're looking at generating a building lease or a ground lease from, but it would be affordable housing development on top of an early child care center. And so how do we incentivize, so to speak, or look at that program from a perspective as a best practice on how you do mixed use development? The other piece that I've been hearing specifically like in Roaring Fork is, how do we create not just rental for affordable housing? How do we create some sort of long-term investment from community, which allows for that down payment assistance, Jeff, that you're talking about, to generate, like, for our teachers, our government workers, like all the people that live in those communities, instead of having them rent affordable housing, how do we create ownership through those programs? And so I would love to talk more about that concessionary debt program, because we've got a lot of feedback on how to do this from a best practice manner, but also how to keep the community developing with longevity for those employers that need to have people in the community. Okay, I'll be quiet. Simon has his hand up, sorry.
I think I go back to the point I was making earlier, or trying to make. Maybe I didn't, it didn't work, but the idea is, like, in the P3, it is a partnership, right? We're not a grant making body, at least we shouldn't be. And in the housing perspective, just like and again, it could be analogous across all of the different areas that we're looking into in terms of our mission, is what is the delta that is not if that is stopping a private builder from building these kinds of homes. And then how then can we leverage or use our assets as leverage as a state to be able to help reduce that delta to the point where those private partners would actually then build, right? And so it's looking at this as developing the partnership, as opposed to us going us being the state going in and saying, oh, we're gonna just fund this affordable housing structure, because then it becomes a program that should be under the auspices of a different agency in this state, right? In DOLA or in CHAFA or at the federal level where they have most of the housing money. So, again, I think it's really important for us to look at these projects as ways that we are helping to reduce that disparity that is not allowing the private sector to do the work, or to create the outcomes that we're looking to achieve.
And
Yes,
just some comments.
oh,
Go ahead, Jeff.
no,
Sorry.
go ahead, David.
I was going to say, just some ideas, Simon, loan guarantees where we charge a fee, or maybe we do, land leases that we charge a fee. We kind of become another organization, right? There's some good and bad with those, but I think those are two things that we could discuss. And then I just have a question for Natrice, but I can wait, Jeff, if you had one on this topic.
No, I was just going to respond. Thanks, David. I was going to respond briefly to Simon and just say, I think, 123, we very much, it is going to be a tool to help developers. I think the thought process is with that 123, likely it may not attract a whole ton of new developers into Colorado, but I think one of the goals is that it can, just to give a hypothetical, cause the developer that's based on the financing and things that they've got, that maybe they're planning to build 50 units of affordable housing. Maybe they can turn that development into 70 units. So it can make some of our developments bigger by providing a subsidy through a public-private partnership, mechanism and tool. So it very much is intended to operate, with private developers that are, doing the work. So I think that, Simon, it definitely could, 123 could function in that spirit. And I was just going to throw two other things out there. There's discussion of changing some pieces of 123, and the 123, a couple of things I was going to say. One is it does include in the definition of affordable housing, to the point made earlier, for sale housing. Several of the programs can provide for sale affordable housing, and the definition it uses, it would be affordable for someone at 100% or below of the area median income, that was using 30% of their income to purchase the mortgage on the property. So and then of course the threshold it uses for rental housing is a not extremely low, but a low income threshold of 60% of area median income. And there's been some discussion about changing some of those area median income thresholds, particularly in resort rural communities. Those may be too low. So there's some discussion about that. And the only other point I was going to make, just to give a sense of timing, the actual money becomes available in the first time to use it in July. So there's work, potentially some legislative work to tweak 123, and then contractual and program development work. So it's not a tomorrow thing, but it's a next year thing at the kind of the halfway point of the next year. So it's just going to make those two additional points to the board. And I'll be quiet now and let others talk.
Natrice, I have a question. When we talk about the public-private partnership elements that we want to see benefits to the state, are we clear on what we think those are? Are they job creation, sales tax revenue, or just, what are those elements? And I don't know if we have a list of, and we don't have to solve it today. I'm just wondering if in our mind, we can say, hey, these are the 5 or 6 things that we measure as a P3 committee. And for this project that came through today, maybe they're only, 2 are applicable, but at least we can give them some specifics when they go back and do their work. I'm just kind of opening it up and maybe asking you, Natrice, specifically.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things we have to look at, Simon's point, was how is the state benefiting from it? And it can't just be, we provided seats. It's got to be some sort of generation of funding, because eventually this is going to be a self-funded model. In P3, we're going to have private sector funding coming in to be able to help with this. I think the other piece that we're looking at for measurement, and this is what I tried to reflect in the scoring metrics, is the community benefit. And maybe we add some language to that, to not just say it's because we're providing seats for early childcare, or it's because we have affordable housing in that particular community, but like, how are we generating income for, or revenue, so to speak, for the state that also ensures that we're helping communities that have been disenfranchised continuously throughout history, right? So I think that's another one. What I'd like to do is think of a couple more. I think of sustainability and O&M as part of one of the requirements that we have and that we ask for, in so that they can come prepared to address those, but also put those in their proposals. So maybe those are questions that I add to that document that we had online that they're filling out. And that's an easy fix that we could do. So those are the three that come to mind immediately. I think there's a couple more that I'd like to think through and bring back to this committee to discuss, like, do we feel like we're tackling all of those, or do we need to make sure that 3 out of the 5 are addressed in order for us to even consider funding a project? And if they don't, then how do we address that project? Do we kick it to another funding source? Do we send it to DOLA? Like, what does that look like? And so what I'd like to do is come back to you all with some mechanisms that I'd like to add to our scoring metrics, and also to the requirements when they fill out their proposal, if that's fair. Okay. Looks like Alethea, you had a question. Does anyone who built the Sunnyside Affordable Housing Unit in Telluride? I can check on that and get back to you. The question was, does anyone know who built the Sunnyside Affordable Housing Unit in Telluride that has a family home childcare units within it? I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, thanks.
I'll check into it though. Any other questions, comments, things that you want to mention from the public or the commissioners before we adjourn?
There's just another project you might look into, Natrice, is the Mariposa project in Denver. That DHA, Denver Housing Authority, did, and it combined like service-oriented entities with mixed income. So it wasn't like, the idea of moving away from concentrating poverty.
Okay, I'll reach out to them. They're actually a stakeholder on the Burnham Yard project, so I need to reach out to them anyway, that I'd like to talk with them about. So I'll make sure I ask about that project as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Great discussion today, and I will look forward to January's meeting, and have a happy holiday.
Well, we'll see you this week.
Oh yeah,
Thursday.
that's right. I'll see you in 2 days, but the
Yeah.
rest of you. I'll see you in 2 days.
Thanks so
Hey,
much,
thank you, everybody.
Latrice. Thanks for
Good
all your
job,
hard
Latrice.
work.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.